Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, depending on what part of the country you're located at. This is Jasir Jamal from Texas 1031 Exchanges, located down south of the country, of course. So before I start this video, just know that every single video I have put up and that I intend to put up in the future, including this one, all of the content that's in there is for informational and educational purposes only. Please do not construe or perceive or consider it as investment or legal advice. Always do your own due diligence and consult with your CPA, your tax attorney, or your estate attorney before making any decisions, any major investment decisions, specifically when it comes down to 1031 exchanges. So with that being said, let's get into the video. So when you have your capital gains and you're about to go buy your replacement property, and of course you might have questions that, hey, I have all these expenses that are coming up on my closing statement or my HUD statement, and can I pay them using my capital gains? Well, of course you can pay them, but just know some of those costs are permissible and some of those costs are not permissible. So the costs that you do pay that are not permissible using your capital gain proceeds, you will owe taxes on those at the end of the year. But I mean, it shouldn't be that bad, but let's go over what those costs are and then we'll talk more about it a little later. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So let's start with the costs that are permissible. I have them listed right over here. Ignore this one first. Let's get over here. So what are the costs that are okay and the IRS will not mind if you use your capital gain proceeds to pay them? Number one, we have the sales commission. So all the brokers out there, if you guys are representing your clients as the buyer, yes, your client can pay your commission. If your client is paying it, your client can pay your commission and it's not going to be an issue for the client. They can pay it using the capital gain proceeds. So that's good. Number two, we have legal fees. So all the attorneys representing their clients, when they're going to use their proceeds to buy the property, yeah, your legal fees will not be an issue for the client at all. The client can pay using the proceeds and they will not have tax problems at the end of the year. We also have finder's fees. Yeah, somebody who found that replacement property for the client and the client is like about to pay them just to find that property, their fees are also covered. The IRS is okay with that as well. That works out well. Then we have escrow fees. So of course, title companies charge escrow fees and the IRS understands that. So there you go. Escrow fees are good to go. We have transfer taxes. Well, I'm sure some cities and some counties throughout whichever state you're doing the 1031 exchange in may have something called transfer taxes. Like if you transfer ownership of the property, you've got to pay taxes. Apparently, I'm not very familiar if they happen here in Texas. I haven't seen any, but I'm sure there are some in other parts of the country that you might be subject to. So therefore, yeah, those transfer taxes are also covered. It's okay if you pay them. You got title insurance fees. So somehow when you're buying the replacement property, we understand usually the seller pays for the title insurance, but hey, if you as the buyer somehow end up paying for title insurance, it's okay. You can pay them using your proceeds. No problem. Then you also have recording fees. I mean, the deed is being recorded, the absolute assignment of rents, and the deed of trust is being recorded. Those costs are going to be passed over to you. They're okay. You can pay them well using the proceeds. You have property taxes. They can also be paid using the proceeds. Thank God. You have exchange fees, aka our fees that we charge, and of course what other qualified intermediaries charge. Those are good. Tax service. I believe these are specifically with regards to, when title companies pull the tax certificate and they pass the costs over to either the buyer or the seller. But regardless, I mean, if you are the one who ends up paying them, you can use your capital gain proceeds to pay them, no problem. You have notary fees. Notary fees can also be paid using the capital gain proceeds without any issues. And that's it, folks. These are all the permissible expenses that the IRS does not mind if you pay them. And at the end of the day, you're not going to pay taxes on these fees and they're not going to be considered boot. But now let's come to the fees that are not permissible in the eyes of the IRS. Yeah, so let's get started. Rent prorations. You can pay the rents. You can pay for rent prorations using your capital gain proceeds, but just know the IRS is not going to like it and they're not going to count that as a legitimate expense and they will tax you on that little expense right there and that'll be considered boot. So yeah, you can't pay using your rent proration. You can't pay for utilities on the replacement property using that. You can't pay for security deposits either using that. So that's just another cold hard truth. Property liability insurance, like the home insurance or just insurance for the property, you cannot pay for it using your proceeds. Application fees, like loan application fees or just any application fees whatsoever, you cannot pay those using your capital gain proceeds, unfortunately. Lender's title insurance. Hey, if you got a lender involved for your replacement property, you got to pay the costs that they charge, like their lender's title insurance fees, all by yourself. You can't use your proceeds. Homeowners dues, HOAs. Fun, ain't? Fun, aren't they? You cannot pay all those HOA fees using your capital gain proceeds. They will be considered boot. You have to deal with them yourself. You have replacement property loan acquisition fees. Well, you can't pay the lender's title insurance fees using your capital gain proceeds. But in addition to that, you cannot pay for all those origination fees. You can't pay for all those late fees, those whatever fees lenders tend to charge. You got to pay them using your own pocket, not using your capital gain proceeds, unfortunately. So, well, folks, I thought that that'd be a very good topic to talk about. I mean, as I mentioned in every video, everything is pretty frequently asked. So I was willing to bet that this was also going to be frequently asked. So therefore, here you go, folks. I hope you got some knowledge out of it. Feel free to replay this video if you're still a little confused on what these fees are. But nevertheless, that's it for me today, folks. If you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And if not, I shall see y'all in the next video.